also open. I'd like to introduce our fantastic guest speakers for today. Phyllis is Hawaii's first certified forest therapy guide and the owner and founder of Forest Bathing Hawaii. Phyllis's professional career began in the performing arts. Then upon her return to her native Honolulu, Phyllis embarked on a career in marketing and communications, first at an ad agency, then on to positions at UH Manoa and Hawaii Public Radio. Today, Phyllis spends her days appreciating nature and sharing and connecting others with the natural world. Welcome, Phyllis. Christina Moon is a digital campaign strategist, writer, and Zen teacher. She currently resides at Daihonzan Chozen-Ji, a Rinzai Zen temple in the back of Kalihi Valley. She anchors Zen training there, as well as heading the marketing efforts to reach a new generation seeking to surpass their self-imposed limits. Christina also runs a consulting company, Moon Strategies, helping mission-driven organizations run digital campaigns to engage supporters, build community, and spark change. Welcome, Christina. And our moderator today is Colby Takeda. Colby is a senior manager with Blue Zones Project Hawaii, a well-being initiative that shares practices from longevity hotspots, Blue Zones, around the world. Colby works across the state to develop innovative programs, form cross-sector partnerships, and advocate for policies to make healthy choices easier. Welcome, Colby, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Reina, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. My name is Colby Takeda, like Reina mentioned, and I'm really excited to help moderate today's session. I've been a proud member of the Japan America Society of Hawaii for many years and continue to enjoy supporting JASH through multiple programs. If you're familiar with the Japan America Society of Hawaii's educational programs, you might know the Asian Pacific Children's Convention, which is a program that allows 11-year-olds to go to Fukuoka, Japan every summer. Believe it or not, I was one of those tiny 11-year-olds who attended the convention as a junior ambassador back in 2000, and I continue to support the local alumni network, Bridge Club Hawaii, as well as all of the other programs through JASH. I was also the Hawaii chaperone last year, so I got to go as an adult and support our youngsters as we go to build connections with Japan and Hawaii and around the world. If you're a JASH member, you might also know me from other events here in Honolulu, and if you're not from Honolulu, we welcome you as well. This is a special event and we want to share this with everyone around the world. So today's event is titled Women Who Lead, Strengthening Our Spirit. And wow, what an important time to have this discussion. Certainly the widespread hardships brought on by COVID-19, the economic crisis, and the ongoing social and racial struggles. Today's topic couldn't be timelier. So let's get into it. I want to start by first welcoming up Christina to get us started with a short exercise to set the tone. Christina?
Hi, everybody. I'm calling in from Daihonzan Chozen-Ji. As Reina said, we're a Rinzai Zen temple in the back of Kalihi Valley here in Honolulu. And Chozen-Ji was founded in 1972 as a place for lay people, so regular people who aren't on a path to become monks in their profession, to train really deeply to forge their spirits to be leaders in the world. It's a kind of monastic, intense level of training that's usually not available to people who aren't ready to renounce everything in their lives. But this place was established by two founders, Omori Sogen, who is Japanese, Stanley or Tenshin Tanoi, who is here from Hawaii, to basically create a place where leaders could come and train. And we'll be getting into sort of what Chozen-Ji's definition of leadership is later in the call. So, JASH asked me to start us all off with just a quick sort of like way to center ourselves and get the most out of this call. One of the things that is very peculiar about how we train at Chozen-Ji is that there isn't like a moment where the training starts and the training ends. It really is kind of 24 hours a day. And if you're doing it seriously, it should be impossible to untangle from the rest of your life. So I'm just gonna, prompt everyone to really just look around at where they are and how they're sitting right now. Unfortunately, I can't see you. It would be great to get that visual feedback, but it's worth noting sort of like, what's your posture right now as you look around, as you are in the space that you're in? Are you sitting up straight? Is your spine straight? Are you tall? Are you taking up space? Are you big feeling? Or are you kind of, slush and relaxed? It's good to be relaxed, but sometimes, if we're really pushing ourselves, I think, to take up a certain space in the world, paying attention to your posture, sitting up really straight, seeing 180 degrees in every direction can really not only change how you feel, but how you're perceived and how people interact with you and how they feel around you. So I would just invite everyone, wherever you are, sit up really straight. Can be relaxed. Your shoulders can be relaxed and down, but your spine can be really straight. You'll find actually that maybe those two things have something to do with one another. Are you seeing 180 degrees? Make sure you can see in every direction, so left to right, up and down. That means your eyes have to be relaxed, but also sharp, maybe as if you were looking at a very distant vista, a mountain, maybe a big mountain in the distance. And then just breathe. And when you breathe, really work on making your out breath really long and slow. So we have a tendency to really breathe up here in the chest, and then also to breathe pretty rapidly, especially when we're in a heightened state of stress and when there's been sort of consistent stress throughout our lives or our days. So I just invite everyone, go ahead, take a deep breath in, and then just exhale with me. So I'm going to put my sort of hand up and down like this to indicate when I'm breathing up and breathing down. Breathing in and breathing out. And I would just say, try match my breath, make it really long and slow. So one of the things that's peculiar about how we train at Chozen-Ji is that we believe that you can enter Zen through the body. So rather than talking about philosophy or very esoteric concepts, we might have someone go swing a sword 1,000 times or go move boulders and rocks for a while. Then when we sit down, we can actually have a much more effective or productive conversation talking about Zen. So the basis of anything that we do up here is that breathing, is posture, seeing, hearing, feeling everything. That's the foundation of everything that we do. And I think later on in the conversation, we'll be sharing a little bit more about, what the rest of sort of Zen training looks like and how it relates to this conversation of dealing with the challenges that face us right now.
Thanks so much for starting us with that, Christina, and for giving that experience. I think it's amazing how simple our breath can be. It gives us life, and it can be so impactful to how we really have our senses heightened. And I think I saw in the chat, some people have actually visited there, and I also see people that have done training there. So just to share a personal experience, I actually got to visit last year and experience 20 minutes of Zazen, which is the meditation that they practice regularly. And I must say that this was not easy. I was sweating, my joints were tightening, my muscles are cramping, and I think I was falling asleep for a little bit of it. But 20 minutes holding position and just focusing on our breath was quite intense. And I remember the sensei, the person leading us then, was threatening to yell at us or come and potentially force us into stillness. And it was actually quite a lot of yelling. So I will say it was not easy. But maybe Christina, if you could tell us more about the yelling. I think it's such an interesting aspect of the training there.
Sure. One of the best sort of diagnostic tools, but also kind of therapeutic training tool that we have is our voice. You can really sort of figure out whether someone is tight up here, too much energy in their head, or if they're connected to their feet, just by having them yell. And of course, Chozen-Ji, as I mentioned, was founded by these two guys, one Japanese, one local from Hawaii. Both of them were exceptionally high-level martial arts masters. And those of you who are familiar with the martial arts probably know that, part of training in karate and kendo, there's often a yell or kiai that's part of it. In kendo, when you hit someone on the head on the men, you say men, and in karate, it's other forms of kiai. So that's what we do. We'll just have people stand there, take a deep breath in, and then yell at the top of their lungs. And it's really remarkable sometimes. And I think part of your group, Colby, there are some people, their voice was really big and resonant. What it meant was that their bodies were relaxed and they were connected to their bodies. And there were other people who the moment that they had to yell, they would shrink up and their voice would get really tight and small, and it would come out sort of like, really muted. And that was a really good indicator of like, oh, that may be a habit that actually comes up in a lot of different parts of your life. When you're in the face of a conflict or being attacked, or, feel like you're being attacked verbally or emotionally, maybe it's to freeze, to get small. Or are there other people for whom the response is totally the opposite? It's just like they kind of rage. They do the big inhale and then it comes out really messy. And so, it's a really good, because it's such a simple exercise, and we have a lot of others like that, to really sort of get at what's holding people back in their bodies and in their minds. And I'm here in the back of the grounds of the dojo at Chozen-Ji, and Kalihi Stream's actually running in the back, and it's not uncommon. I hope it doesn't happen during this webinar, but it's not uncommon for one of our monks to go just be in the back of the dojo at the stream and just yell their lungs out for like 10 minutes just to work something out or get something moving the right way, get their energy up. The training's pretty intense. You get pretty tired. So sometimes you get creative with what's going to give me enough energy to get through the next sit.
I think that's a sign or a acknowledgement that we all can yell on our own if we want to, and we have an intentional reason to yell now. So thanks for that. And I can honestly say that you're probably my first monk or priest friend. So briefly, can you share what that means to be a priest or monk in Chozen-Ji?
Sure. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, Chozen-Ji was established as a place for leaders to come and train really deeply to forge their own spirits. So what that means is that we're like pretty engaged with the world. This isn't a place to come and retreat or renounce the outside world. That's the reason why, even as a monk living here, I don't have a shaved head. It'd be pretty tough for me to like go into a boardroom downtown for a meeting and be taken seriously, or for people to be able to relate to me if I showed up in robes with a shaved head. You know, it's also why, as I think in my, introduction or in Reina's introduction of me, she mentioned that I also work. So I work during the day. Chozen-Ji doesn't actually have any paid staff as far as teachers and training goes. And what that also means is that we're able to offer the training freely to anyone who's sincere enough to really want to do it. So being a monk based at Chozen-Ji means that I live here at the monastery and I live by a monastic schedule. So for us, that means we are up by 5 a.m. Monday through Friday. And then we sit for 45 minutes, as Colby was describing, 45 minutes, eyes open, no moving at all. And then after that, we'll have some sort of Budo martial arts training or maybe Okyo chanting and breakfast, and then sort of chores and work throughout the day. For someone like me who actually works a day job, I keep pretty normal hours, sort of 8 to 4. And then in the evening, again, there's, pretty intensive training. So 2 back-to-back 45-minute sittings, some sort of Budo in the evening. And then the weekends have a, pretty similar schedule in terms of zazen and training. And then anyone who's sort of not working during the day, who might be living in as a monk, or even a local student who just comes during the day, a lot of our training actually doesn't look like what you would expect. It just is manual labor. So you'll see people moving rocks, pushing around wheelbarrows of gravel, building rock walls, stuff like that throughout the day.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I now want to transition a bit, and I want to welcome up Phyllis Look. Phyllis, I got to meet her about 1.5 years ago now, and be able to work with her on a couple of different programs, and I really enjoyed our experiences together. So Phyllis, would you briefly share more about who you are and your organization, Forest Bathing Hawaii, and the practice of Shinrin Noku? Oh, Phyllis, I think you're on mute. You're gonna mute. Thank you.
Oh, silly.
Thank
okay.
you.
Am I better now? Okay. So first
Yes.
of all, mahalo to Japan American Society of Hawaii for bringing us all together in this virtual space. And I had the benefit of following Christina and noting some of the similarities between what we do. And I noticed that the first thing that she did was identify where she was. So in forest bathing tradition, we have something similar. So I just wanted to send my greetings from my home in the wide and green Manoa Valley here in Honolulu to all of you who are listening right now. I noticed that some people were calling in all the way from Utah and all the way down south to Captain Cook. So welcome to you all. I think that for me, although because we can't see you, this helps me sort of put our bodies in place. So forest bathing. This is a growing global movement, and the definition of forest bathing is actually evolving. But what I feel is true for me right now is that this is a health solution for people and the planet. And it starts with the small step of slowing down and noticing and giving your attention to the natural world. You may hear it referred to as forest therapy, or even more broadly, nature therapy, because really a forest is optional. You can do this at a tide pool, on a desert mesa, in an urban green space, even in your backyard victory garden. All of those are going to provide wonders and be fitting locations for a forest bathing experience. I'm a certified forest therapy guide, and I got my training about 2 years ago from the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs, and at that time then founded my company, Forest Bathing Hawaii. As guides, we're not therapists, and we're not even necessarily naturalists or botanists. Our role is to open the door for you to have your own unique and innate connection with the more than human world. And we do that by hosting small group walks on easy trails. I offer them to private and public groups. I offer a sequence of sensory opening and relationship building invitations. And I also loved how Christina was using the word invite. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And giving participants opportunities to share their experiences. And what you're seeing right now is actually a photo that Colby took of the forest bathing experience at Ho'omaluhia Botanical Garden on the windward side. And the participants there are just beginning their forest bathing walk and connecting with that lovely tree that we're standing under.
Yeah, thanks, Phyllis, for that background. And so, like Reina mentioned, I work in community health, and I often, would tell my friends I'm going to be going on a forest bathing walk, and they would immediately ask me, like, what, walking in a forest, and how does that relate to well-being? And so, that background of the connections to therapists, therapy, and being out in nature is certainly relevant and important for our well-being. I think the origin story really helps to demonstrate the effects of nature. And so, Phyllis, do you mind sharing more about the origins of Shinrin Noku and maybe some of the science behind it and how it can relate to our health?
Right, great. Well, Colby just passed me like the perfect baton right there by using the word Shinrin Noku. This is a term that was coined in the early 80s in Japan, and it translates literally to forest bathing. And the location, the place, the birthplace, and the time that this practice came about is, I think, quite significant. So thank you for that invitation, Colby. Okay, so cast your mind back to Japan, 1980s. This is now 4 decades after the end of World War II, and Japan had rebounded. It had recovered from the devastation of World War II. It not just recovered, it actually came roaring back. And the result of all of this rapid industrialization and urbanization actually took its toll on the people of Japan. They were seeing spikes in stress-related diseases like strokes, cancers, autoimmune diseases, even suicides. They even had to coin a new word for a new phenomenon that they were noticing around this time, and the term was karoshi, which means death by overwork. So to deal with this public health crisis, one of the Japanese government's solutions was to adopt an innovative preventative strategy, one proposed by the forest therapy scientists who were just beginning their work at this time. And basically what they proposed was that we medicalize one of the primary resources of Japan, their forests, because Japan is 3/4 covered by forests. We don't think of that. We think of the Tokyos, Osakas, but literally if you were to fly over Japan, what you would see are mountains and forests. And today, there are about 70 government-supported forest bathing bases around the country to which the stressed out citizen can go to reset and regain balance. And the photo that you're just seeing right there was one of my participants at the Lion Arboretum. Now, for more than 30 years at these forest bathing bases, as well as at experimental settings now around the world, they've collected and are continuing to collect data on the physical, mental, and even behavioral effects of spending time in nature. And this is what they're finding. Improvements in cardiovascular function, everything from your heart rate slowing, your heart rate variability, your blood pressure lowering. Your immune system is being boosted. A kind of white blood cell that is a cancer-fighting one is actually activated. Cortisol levels. Cortisol is one of the hormones, like adrenaline, that we were designed evolutionarily to, it was designed to kick in when we are experiencing a situation that requires us to fight or flee. And living in this modern day world, there is often opportunity for that stress response to get triggered, and our cortisol levels remain at this elevated level, and that leads to all sorts of health problems. So the slow walk in nature, by contrast, quiets this stress response and allows what is called the parasympathetic nervous system to do its work. In other words, allowing our bodies to rest and digest, like this gentleman is doing here, also one of the participants on the walk. Mental health benefits include improved executive decision-making skills, increased attention and focus. And think about what that would mean for kids with ADD or ADHD, right? I actually had a young participant who was on the spectrum. And after the walk, his parents told me that he said to them, "This was the best day of my life." So I'll just leave you with one last sciencey tidbit. And this is the area of science that is particularly fascinating to me. And it's also something I've witnessed in my walk participants. And it has to do with the social effects of experiencing awe. That's AWE. So when we are in the presence of something that's bigger than ourselves, like nature, studies show that it results in us feeling more compassionate, more generous, and more willing to collaborate. And just last month, the New York Times posted an article on this awesome fact. And if you'd like to read it for yourself, I think we're going to put the link up in the chat so you can grab that and check out that article for yourself. So there's more and more evidence of this interrelationship between the human well-being and spending time outdoors. And it's even beginning to make its way into doctors' prescriptions. If you're interested in reading more, again, I'd refer you to the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy's website. There's a whole archive of articles there. But I have a little bit of time, and I just wanted to make one last little plug, because our work is so much about remembering that it's not all about us, right? It's not about just humans at the top of the food chain with nature there below us as a resource for us to consume. So I wanted to mention too that there's a growing body of really cool science about the interconnectedness of all living things. And it extends from the fact that mother trees support and care for their seedlings through a fungal network that we call the Wood Wide Web. It extends to studies showing that flowers can actually hear honeybees, and when they hear the buzzing nearby, they actually produce a sweeter nectar. So who thought that flowers can actually hear, right? So there's all of this incredible science that's going on right now, and I welcome you to dive in and find out something now about what's happening about the way that we are all in a web of being. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Phyllis. And like I mentioned, I work in health and well-being, and we certainly promote being outdoors. And I think it's a national movement to get more parks and more green spaces in our communities, allowing us to have more street trees along our streets and to both provide shade and provide other benefits. But certainly the connection with nature is so important. I think that's what some of your participants get to experience on a forest bathing walk. So now, I really want to offer the opportunity for our guests here today to kind of get a glimpse of what a forest bathing experience might be and an invitation. Would you mind leading us through an invitation, please, Phyllis?
I'd be happy to. So the word invitation is used very specifically, right? It's not an exercise, it's not an assignment. There's no right or wrong way. I have absolutely no outcome in mind for you whatsoever. It's just a suggestion. So for the next 3 minutes, let's do a little bit of forest bathing, even if you're indoors and if the only trees that are nearby is the paper that you can touch on your desk, and if the only sand from the beach is the glass on your computer screen. Nevertheless, nature is all around you. So I invite you now to position yourself near a window. And if possible, open it for some fresh air. And bring to the forefront of your mind now an image of yourself as a much younger being. Maybe you're half the size you are now. Perhaps if you were to look in a mirror, your face would be unlined, the skin smooth, The joints in your body, your back, your shoulders are supple, fluid, easy. Maybe you've just woken up from your afternoon nap. Look out the window. And I wonder what you would see with those fresh eyes and the curiosity of a child. What's in motion? Are you noticing perhaps the breeze pushing along the clouds? I'm noticing some wind ruffling the tea leaves outside my window. And I invite you now to close your eyes. Can you feel that same breeze that was moving the clouds, and creating emotion in the world around you? Can you feel that same breeze on your skin? What does the touch of that breeze make you feel? I wonder if the trees and the clouds have that same feeling as the breeze passes over the surface of their being. And return to your regular breathing. And notice the motion of the movement of your chest as the breath comes in and out. The motion of the outside world, the motion of your body. And consider that as you breathe out, you are exhaling the carbon dioxide that the trees need to live and grow. And as you breathe in, you're breathing in the oxygen that the trees breathed out. And every moment of every day, this exchange is going on between you and the trees, you and the world, breathing together. And on that flute, come back from your window, back to the webinar. And after each invitation, we invite our participants to share their experience. It's a way of connecting with each other and experiencing our shared humanity. And that was a very, very quick, brief invitation. I'm not allowing us to sit probably for as long as we should. But if you would like, enter in the chat box now what you are noticing. What are you noticing? And take your time. Colby said the wind blowing through the leaves of my papaya trees. Charmaine said that she's feeling more calm and at peace. Carol said that she's feeling calmer. Thank you. Colby, back to
Yeah,
you.
thanks so much. Thanks so much, Phyllis. And Phyllis typically would lead forest bathing sessions in person and in different parts of the island. And I got to visit with her on different occasions and go with her on these walks. And it's quite a transformational experience. And, so I now want to welcome back up and please continue to write in the chat box, you know, what you're noticing. And I think it's wonderful to see what other people are posting, as well as to share your own experience. And this is something that, you know, it's not complicated. You could do this on your own on any day, any time, and just to notice and slow down. Like those are the essentials. So I just want to welcome back now Christina and just engage in a short conversation with you two, and also field any questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to them. But I think it's clear, you know, both of these practices are quite different, but also quite similar. You know, they certainly can help one's spirit. And I think in this given time, you know, it's really important, that connection to our spirit. So if you wouldn't mind, Christina, maybe share a little bit about what that connection might look like.
Sure. I really liked that we went with the title of Strengthening Our Spirits for this webinar, because that really is the Chozen-Ji approach, and personally how I approach this as well. You know, you probably noticed I used some sort of like strange words. You don't usually think about like spiritual training, Zen training. It sounds a little bit more intense than like practice or exercise. So there's a reason for that. And that's really because, you know, Zen training, the way we do it anyway, it is not meant as like a balm to soothe you, or even as a painkiller to take away your suffering. It's really to get at those bigger sort of existential questions. Like, suffering is a reality of being a human being. And so what do you do about it? If you can't get rid of it, then can you change your relationship to it? Can you reduce the suffering in your world, in your life, knowing that, you know, pain and suffering are different things. Pain might be the thing that's inevitable. Suffering might be something maybe you have control over. So, you know, the well-being aspects of Zen training are definitely there. They're all the same things that Phyllis described, and the scientific, you know, the body of science behind it is pretty substantial. But for us, particularly in, you know, times that are really challenging, like right now, it's really good for people to consider, you know, maybe there's a way to build strength that could be in your body, could be mental, but also, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King called it soul power. You know, and that was a real key behind the civil rights movement, was not just that they had good strategy, not just that they had numbers, but that they had a certain something, a strength of spirit that they could bring into every encounter to do things that to most people would seem really impossible. So for us, that's sort of the purpose of all of this, and why, you know, strengthening one's spirit is as important as cultivating sensitivity, empathy. We really subscribe to the Latin root of the word compassion, which means to suffer with. If you don't have the strength to be able to suffer with someone in their most difficult moment, then you're not of much use. You end up taking on some of the burden, or maybe you compound their suffering because you too have some emotion coming up. So to really be able to do that, or even say, take away someone's fear, take away someone's anxiety and suffering, it really takes tremendous strength. And that's the aspect of spiritual training and discipline that Chozen-Ji really excels in, to the point where people sometimes, feel like it's a little intense, as Colby mentioned, getting yelled at in the dojo during meditation, getting threatened with being thrown out if you move around. But it's definitely part and parcel of how we approach, any spiritual pursuit.
Yeah, excellent. And how about you, Phyllis? How does forest bathing help us connect to our spirit?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to defer to the way of the guide in responding to this question. And rather than give you a definitive answer, I'd like to offer a poem that I think will help everybody experience for themselves the forest bathing perspective on restoring our spirit in challenging times. And the poem is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. If you like, you can read it aloud with me. And if our JASH staff members could help me by putting that up on the screen. Thank you, guys. So if you want, you can read it aloud with me and maybe feel how these words bounce around in your body. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And that's
really great. Yeah. Thank you, Phyllis, for that.
what she wrote.
Yeah. Great. So this session is, about women who lead, and while we recognize that leadership isn't about having the titles or being the smartest person in the room or having the most experience, you certainly both come very highly respected in your own communities. And so I'm curious, what do you think leadership means to you, and what is most fulfilling about leading others? Christina?
Yeah, one of the leaders I respect the most here in Hawaii actually is a guy that you might not have heard of. His name is James Pakele. And James Pakele shows up to events, and whenever there's not always, but I have seen him wear an "Aloha, my name is" name tag, and all it says on it is nobody. And you got to ask, okay, Pakele, what's up with the name tag? So Pakele is like the right-hand man for Twinkle Borge, who's the leader of the Pu'u Honua o Waianae 200-person homeless encampment out by the Waianae Boat Harbor. They recently raised $1.5 million to buy 20 acres of their own land, and they're going to move the whole village up onto their own private land. So Pakele was a really big part of this. So Pakele, what's the deal with the "Aloha, my name is nobody" name tag? And he'll say, well, I always go around, people are talking about homelessness. They say, oh, nobody wants to help. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to lend a hand when someone's on their worst day. I'll be nobody. That's what leadership is. And until a year ago, Pakele drove a truck for his job. People would not look at him and think of him as the archetype of leadership, but that is exactly what he does every day. So, and he totally fits Chozen-Ji's definition of leadership too, because leadership is like, being a leader is something that anyone and actually everyone should do in their own way. And you don't have to be the CEO of a company. You could, you know, just be a leader in your community, on your block, in your family. And probably my favorite definition is from our abbot at Chozen-Ji, Mike Sayama. And he talks about the core of leadership is responsibility, spelled as the word response and the word ability, which means the ability to respond. If you are able to respond, then it's your responsibility to do something. And that's really how a leader should approach things. So there's the Japanese saying, if you see a weed, pull it. You know, that is the root of leadership. And it really, you know, again, it fits with, if you can't move a rock, if you can't coil the hose up here at Chozen-Ji, I don't know, can you lead a company? Learn to move a rock first. That's our approach.
I love that. Thank you. And Phyllis, how about you? What does leadership mean to you, and how do you lead others?
Yeah, you know, my background is in theater, right? And I started as a stage director. So I think I first learned who I was as a leader in that role. And leadership to me has always been about bringing people together to do something that alone we were not capable of. So those instances where I was able to create a space where others were able to experience their own genius, and that together we were able to create a transformative experience for ourselves or for others. I think those are the times when I felt the most fulfilled and proud. You know, now I find now that as a forest therapy guide, my impact in the world is very modest. I guide maybe 500 people a year, maybe less in COVID times. But I like to think that every forest bather who's experienced a walk will never see a tree or experience the rain in the same way again. So I take comfort in thinking that I and perhaps all of the other guides doing forest therapy around the world are involved in a kind of a quiet revolution. And we can make a stand to protect the environment, to promote world peace, to bring people to respecting each other. And all of these big things can begin with something as small as falling in love with the flap of a butterfly's wing. So to me, that's leadership. Show them the butterfly.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Phyllis. So I want to get to some of your questions now. So if you do have questions, please enter them through the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen or in the chat box. One person asked, what does it involve to become a forest therapist or forest therapy guide?
Oh, okay.
What does that training look like?
Sure. The training is now quite different because of COVID. So it's actually a hybrid of an online curriculum, lots of modules where they are meeting with their cohort online, and then also practicing and eventually coming together. So when I trained about 2 years ago, this is of course before the pandemic, I went to Costa Rica, where they were having a training for 6 or 7 days. And then we go back to our homeland and go through a curriculum of 6 months. And in that time, you got all sorts of assignments. I felt like I was going through a master's program, really. You're finding the land that you want to work in and learning about it. You're finding plants that actually would make a safe tea, and you're building your own connection with nature. So it's a wonderful program. The pedagogy is spot on, and I would highly recommend it if anybody was interested. You can just go to that Association of Nature and Forest Therapy website and find out more. I hope that answers your question. Whoever asked that, feel free to contact me if you need more.
Awesome. And for Christina, you know, how does a beginner get involved in Zen training, either at Chozen-Ji or on their own?
I don't recommend it on your own. At Chozen-Ji, it's pretty straightforward. We have a website, chozen-ji.org, and there's a tab there called training that has our class schedule. So people come up who are local. People just come up for a beginning class and they get some of the basic forms. We get them, I usually teach it. I get people to a point where they can sit 45 minutes without moving. Sometimes that's, you know, they need one class, they know how to enter the dojo, hold gasho, sit down, no problem. Sometimes it takes 6 weeks. So it really depends on the person. Our approach is very much not like a mass sort of mass-produced training method. Is really more like an apprenticeship. So it's what makes sense for each person. It takes, you know, it's quite resource intensive actually, from our perspective. And then, you know, people who are not from Hawaii, who are outside of Hawaii, it's generally a longer process, but if they're interested in, they're really, you know, feel driven to come and train in Zen seriously, they can come and live here. And actually local people can come live here too and train that way. So come be a monk. We usually recommend at least 3 months, a year, 3 years, or the other time periods. And then you get to experience it 24/7, really reset your habits. And there are a lot of ways to interact for people who are local too. We have people who, you know, they come sit once in a while, and mostly they're here as the community to support the dojo because they appreciate what we do, you know, training people who are at a certain point in their lives where they really need to level up to make a difference for the wider community. And then that's what these, you know, dojo sort of supporters want to help make sure continues. And so they bring by food. They might come sit just once in a while and not do this really serious Zen training, but there is a very strong relationship there and a way for us to support one another.
Yeah, thanks. And actually know quite a few people that have either trained there or continue to visit for the classes. And Phyllis, how about you? Can you share some tips that we can leave our audience with? And also if they want to experience a forest bathing walk with you, how they can do that?
Sure, yeah. I'll address the latter half of your question first. So with the pandemic, of course, not being able to gather in groups and with many of the lands that I guide in being closed, we pivoted to doing this virtually. So I now also offer virtual walks, and we're finding that they're just as effective, and I'm able to meet people from around the world. So you can find me at my website, forestbathinghi.com. In terms of doing this yourself, I'm sort of the mind with Christina that I prefer that you be guided because I think there's a certain perspective and a certain leverage that I think the guide can offer. But nevertheless, I also want you to find your own way into nature. So I think the first thing to do is find some place outside where it's safe. The main key is unplug your devices. Go slow, use your senses, feel more than think. Find a sit spot. That's kind of what we did when we looked out the window, and visit it often. And then share what the forest gives you. It's about that tell about it that I think is really what's so important about making that next connection to our human community. And I've just added this new one, Colby. I think you might like this. And that is, take a child into nature. And whether that is yourself or whether it's someone of the next generation. Those are my tips.
Awesome, amazing. So we're running out of time, and I just want to close by, you know, thanking you both. I think you're able to share your wonderful gifts and knowledge with us, and I think the richness of your lives is both inspiring and also providing us with valuable tools to help us live more purposeful, enriching lives. And I think, you know, it's safe to say we're all facing extraordinary challenges now and hardships, and And these type of practices, you know, being more connected to ourselves, to people around us, and to nature can really help us in these trying times. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to turn it back over to the JASH team to close us out today.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Phyllis, Christina, and Colby. Colby, particularly to you for bringing Phyllis to us and then sharing your experience with Phyllis and with Christina. It was a wonderful hour, and I hope all of you really took a moment to step back from your busy lives and from all that's going on in the media and the world to just I think just recharge, because although I felt calm from practicing the breathing and the invitation that Phyllis gave us, I also felt re-energized. So it's really a good combination. So I hope that all of you connect with Christina and or Phyllis in some way in the future. Because this is something that can really benefit all of us, you know, for a lifetime. So thank you again to our speakers and again to you, Colby. And to all of you out there, we wish you well, stay safe, be well, and thank you for joining JASH. This is what we do. We do it for you. So we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.